For the longest time, I thought that marine biodiversity was, for the most part, limited to shallow water continental shelf type environments, which, if you think about it, makes sense because that's where sunlight can reach, and when so many marine organisms live on or even attached to the seafloor, like sponges, corals, mollusks, and other reef builders, being shallow enough that sunlight can reach that seafloor is essential. However, after going on a recent GSA field trip to Isla del Carmen in the Gulf of California, my views on marine biodiversity have completely changed. In the last video from this field trip, we explored how this island formed, from ancient volcanoes back when the Baja Peninsula was attached to mainland Mexico, to marine sediment deposition when this island was submerged below sea level, to tectonic uplift in the last several million years. But today, we're exploring how the geological history of this island led to the incredible marine ecosystems that surround it today, and how many species, and entire ecosystems for that matter, are still waiting to be discovered. To start, let's travel back a few million years. As we discussed in the previous video, the Gulf of California is a relatively young ocean basin, only opening in the last roughly 6 million years. As Baja California separated from mainland Mexico, tectonic forces created a series of deep basins, narrow channels, submarine ridges, and complex coastlines. And those geological features didn't just reshape the landscape, they created entirely new habitats. Some shallow, some hundreds of meters deep, and some more than a kilometer beneath the surface. So tectonics dramatically increased the number of environments available for life here in the Gulf. And one reason the Gulf of California supports such abundant marine life is productivity. Near the ocean's surface, sunlight fuels photosynthesis. Microscopic phytoplankton converts sunlight into organic matter, and that organic matter becomes food for zooplankton. And those zooplankton feed fish, and the fish feed larger predators, and so on until entire food webs emerge. And while, yes, most biomass is concentrated in these shallow, sunlit areas where photosynthesis drives the food chain, that doesn't necessarily mean that most biodiversity is in the shallow waters. An important thing to remember throughout this video is that the abundance of life, or abundance of biomass, is different than the diversity of life. For example, you can have an abundance of corals in a shallow marine system, but if it's just corals, it's not actually that diverse. And on the other hand, you can have an ecosystem with high diversity but low abundance, which we'll see as we start getting deeper. For decades, scientists generally believed that biodiversity declined steadily with depth. After all, the deep ocean is cold, high pressure, difficult to access, sometimes has lower oxygen concentrations, and most importantly, it's dark. The lack of sunlight is one of the biggest reasons we've long assumed that deep marine environments are less diverse than shallow ones, because the diversity we see at the surface is all driven initially by photosynthesis. That said, the discovery of diverse marine ecosystems at deep-sea hydrothermal vents in the late 70s did change our views on this, because we learned that ecosystems could be driven by chemosynthesis rather than just photosynthesis. In other words, microbes could produce energy and organic matter from inorganic chemicals instead of relying on sunlight, which in turn fuels larger, more complex organisms and creates sunlight-independent ecosystems. However, even these chemosynthetic ecosystems do rely on the chemicals being pumped out of the vents. So even though this discovery did change our views on what was possible in the deep ocean, we still kind of assumed that in areas where there aren't any hydrothermal vents, the deep sea was relatively barren and much less diverse than shallow environments. Enter Adrian, one of our amazing field guides on this Isla del Carmen field trip, who is working with colleagues to study the deep, sunless seafloor of the Gulf of California. Their research suggests that while biomass, or the abundance of life, generally decreases with depth, biodiversity might not. They've actually found that deep water diversity in the Gulf of California is often very similar to shallow water diversity. So the species are very different, but there may be just as many of them. The problem is we simply haven't explored enough of the deep ocean. Scientists estimate that humans have visually observed less than 0.001% of the deep ocean, or areas with depth over 200 meters, which means most of Earth's largest habitat remains unexplored. In fact, so little has been explored that the majority of species in deep water are completely unknown or unidentifiable. Adrian told me on this trip that in the shallow water, so less than 30 meters deep, 20 to 30% of the DNA sequences do not have a good match to name them or to place them within larger taxonomic groups. In other words, about 20 to 30% of shallow marine species in the Gulf are unknown or unidentifiable. However, that number jumps to 60 to 70% at depths over 200 meters. One of the other really fascinating discoveries from Adrian's work is that depth appears to matter much more than geographic location. You might assume that species near Isla del Carmen would be different from species elsewhere in the Gulf, but that's often not the case. Instead, species tend to be associated with particular water masses or layers of water defined by temperature, salinity, oxygen content, and other physical properties, so that a species living at 500 meters depth may be more similar to another species hundreds of kilometers away at the same depth than to a species living directly above it near the surface. So in many ways, the ocean behaves like a layered world, and each layer hosts its own type of ecosystem. And this is where geology really comes back into the story. The research Adrian and his colleagues have done in the Gulf has shown that without a doubt, one of the strongest controls on biodiversity is the type of substrate of the seafloor. Hard, rocky bottoms support very different ecosystems than sandy or muddy environments. For example, many foundational species that create habitats for other species, like hard corals, black corals, and sargassum forests, require hard substrate. And these rocky reefs themselves host very different invertebrates and fish, like sea urchins, anemones, lobster, groupers, and snappers, than a sandy area without rocks, which might host clams, flounders, sea pens, and rays. And the geology doesn't just control the type of seafloor present, but also the depths of ocean basins, which in the Gulf of California has changed dramatically over the last several million years. The very shallow marine environments that were present here when the Gulf was first inundated 6-ish million years ago have progressively become deeper, creating new pelagic habitats. We can actually see some of this history and the fossilized ecosystems from these different stages of Gulf formation in some of the limestones preserved on Isla del Carmen. But the geology not only affects the seafloor substrate and depth, but also ocean circulation. Some of the deep and narrow channels that form due to rifting here are incredibly productive areas year-round because their geometry funnels wind, tides, and ocean currents, driving intense water mixing and nutrient transport. So all that is to say, geology doesn't just shape landscapes, it shapes environments and ecosystems as well. And the Gulf is not done changing. As rifting continues, it's likely that new, deeper environments will form, leading to entirely new ecosystems. But perhaps the most astonishing discovery from this research is what we still don't know. According to Adrian, the known biodiversity of the Gulf of California may represent less than 10% of its true diversity. So I hope you've enjoyed this video about my humbling realization of how much we still don't know about both the geology and biology of the deep sea. And if you'd like to join an incredible expert-guided GSA adventure like this one, I'll include a link below to upcoming field trips. See you out there. Bye! Okay, I wanted to make a quick side note at the end of this video because a few videos ago I had on the amazing economic geologist Elizabeth Freeman, where the topic of deep sea mining came up briefly, and we both implied that the deep marine environments where these metallic nodules form have lower biodiversity than other potentially mineable environments and habitats, and suggesting that it might not be as bad as alternatives, especially since mining is a necessity for the sustainable future. But there were comments on that video saying, no, those deep nodule environments aren't less diverse than shallow environments. They are just as diverse. and so on. And so because this video is about deep sea diversity, I figured this would be a good time to address those comments from that previous video. So first off, you are right that the diversity of those nodule fields or those environments where the nodules form is higher than we once assumed based on recent research. However, I want to make it clear that the deep sea regions that Adrian and his colleagues are exploring in the Gulf of California at around 200 to 500 meters are still much shallower than the deep abyssal plain environments where these nodules form in the open ocean at around 4,000 to 6,000 meters. And so, well, maybe I shouldn't have said that these environments have low biodiversity. They do have much lower biomass than surface environments. So going back to the idea earlier in the video about the difference between biomass or abundance of life and diversity of life. Even though the organisms in these abyssal plains may be diverse, they are much smaller, simpler, and much less abundant than life at the surface or near hydrothermal vents where there's sources of nutrients and food. So anyway, none of that is to say that we should or should not be mining these nodules. I cannot speak on that as I am not a researcher that does that research. But that is to say, from what I can tell, we need to do a lot more research in terms of deep sea biodiversity. There's just too much that we don't know, especially after talking with Adrian and hearing just how much we don't know. So all that is to say that deep sea environments differ depending on depth, location, environment type, geology, as we talked about in this video. And yeah, there's just a lot we don't know. So anyway, let's get out there and explore. Bye. Suki, come here. Hey, honey. Hello. Hi. Thank you. Good job. You stay? Can you stay with me?